I'm pretty sure I've said it before, and most likely I'll say it again. But do you ever wonder why God put you um, in this time and space? I often ponder that thought. I know history repeats, and as far as like we live in a debt-based fiat system, which entraps many people. That's the way it's designed. Um, and we're at the end game of it, of the cycle that we've been in. I believe they have over 9 or 10 trillion dollars that they got to refinance in the next 12 months, along with the debt, the new debt. I guess if you've got a money printer, that's not a problem. But I, I was a carpenter, and I was in business for myself many of those years. And I, I think I've maybe shown this picture before. Um, but that's me doing the foundation of my house that I'm standing in right now. And I was working full time for a contractor at the time, and I was building that house on the side and paying for it as I went. But I remember several days. I remember a hot day out when I was digging the footings. It's kind of a clay, real sticky. You'd stick the shovel in, and it would just kind of make a sucking sound. But I remember throwing up. I worked so hard in the heat and doing that. And I used to do that on a regular basis, work that hard. Now the thought of it just kind of makes me cringe. But I think of all the buildings that I worked on, and then I built this house and my mom and dad's house. My father's passed away, but my mom still lives there. But I built these two houses, and then all the other houses that I built and all the buildings. And I was thinking of all the property tax revenue that I created for the taxing bodies, the bonds, the school, mainly the school boards, the school districts. It's theft. It is literally theft. And I was working on my taxes last night, and the property taxes that we pay, my number is beyond belief, of the property taxes on the house and the two houses and stuff. And when you're getting over 20 grand in property taxes a year, it's like we don't own anything. We're just renters. But it really is. The founding fathers, they, what they did with tea tax, but they would be rolling over in their grave with what we put up with as far as the money that. So I always looked at it as far as debt. In a debt-based system, you've got to deal with it. But I looked at good debt and bad debt. The way I do debt right now is basically my credit card. We buy our groceries with it. It's a Discover card, and I pay that off every month. I've never gone a month where I don't pay it off. You just use it because it's handy. I call that good debt. And when I was building my house, I had it to this point. Actually, I had the floor joists on, and then I had to cover it up with plastic for a year because I ran out of money. and because I never had a mortgage, home loan, mortgage loan, but I remember putting that plastic. I think I've told this story before too. I remember putting that plastic on, and the first night I came out, and the raccoons had just sliced and diced it by sliding across it. And then I ended up getting some cover sheets off the job that they would, the builder that I was working for, we'd have metal cover sheets on the metal, and I used that to cover. In fact, I gave a bunch to my father-in-law for some of his buildings, and but and I'm thinking, could you do that today with the environment of the financial system? That's a good question. I know it'd be more of a temptation to get in a lot more debt with all of the tools they have. Oh my gosh, they got mini skids, and they got all kinds of stuff. Back in my day, we basically just worked real hard. And now they got tools to make a lot of stuff easier. But anyhow, I guess the moral of my story is, try not to become bitter in this day and age. I know a lot of people that are hanging on by their bootstraps. It's easy for them to become bitter, where when you're not, I have no debt at all other than property taxes. And that can build kind of a bitterness, bitterness towards those people that are inflicting upon us. But Scripture is very clear. Hebrews 12:15. See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled. And all too often I see that. And it's just human nature, if you're offended by something, to become bitter. But we're all sinners. We're all saved by grace. All the ground at the cross is level. There's no, my sin is just as dirty as the other guy's sin. And if it wasn't for the grace of God, of anybody that has to be bitter, it could be God. So I have no business being bitter when the tax man offends me. I still smile at him and treat him as one of God's creatures. And I think of the story, a good story that comes to mind on that is Zacchaeus. He was a tax collector. The society hated him. And he climbs up in that sycamore tree, and Jesus, that was one of the questions the Sunday school teachers asked me when I was a little boy. They always saved that question for me. They'd say, Johnny, who climbed the sycamore tree? And I'd say, Zacchaeus. He was a wee little man. I guess because I was a wee little man. But Jesus said, Zacchaeus, you come down from there. And he took him in, and he dined with him. So there's a story there. Life is way too short. I'm going to read it again. Hebrews 12:15. See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God. That's God telling us we've received your grace by your grace, God. that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled. Alrighty. Keep walking by faith in this crooked and depraved culture that we live in. So, all right, you all have a good one. God bless.